So I think it is essential to have a focus on climate change. I think that the World Economic Forum and everybody here should be doing everything they possibly can to avoid a climate apocalypse. But I don't think the words are matching the actions yet. So, I think that we're hearing a lot about it and we're seeing panels with youth, but I haven't yet heard the new commitments that are going to come forward in order to, for example, that banks would shift their funding out of fossil fuels, or that other companies would be moving to, rapidly decarbonize their supply chains.
So you don't think there is like an increased awareness amongst big companies and especially financial companies? I think we have this this huge announcement by BlackRock last week about focusing more on sustainable companies. Don't you expect more pressure from the financial investor and from the financial side on companies?
Well, I think that I wouldn't overstate it. So Greenpeace published a report today called "It's the Finance Sector Stupid," because we wanted to draw attention to the very important role of banks and asset managers and pension funds and insurance companies, right? And what we found was that since the Paris Agreement, that the 24 banks that have been coming to Davos since then have invested $1.4 trillion in fossil fuels. And so, although they may speak about being Paris compliant, they're continuing to pump money in completely the wrong direction. And yes, again, there's lots of talk and bits happening, but I want to see the proposals for regulation of the financial sector. I want to see these banks from JP Morgan Chase to Bank of America to Barclays in Europe, the worst bank in Europe. I want to see their commitments to phase out their funding of fossil fuels. Until I see the level of commitment, then I'm not taking it very seriously. I think even BlackRock, they have announced that they're going to phase out their funding for thermal coal. They haven't announced by when. They haven't included other fossil fuels. So, step by step one can say, but we've been saying that for 50 years. So the next decade is absolutely essential, and these banks need to become part of the solution, because right now they're as responsible as the fossil fuel industry.
And at the same time, there are a lot of talks here in Davos, even for a lot of CEOs on climate change. But by contrast, Donald Trump this afternoon didn't mention climate change, and he didn't mention renewable energies either. So are you a little bit disappointed by that? Or probably is it more honest than just greenwashing or empty promises? What is your view on what he said?
Well, I wouldn't associate the word honest with Donald Trump. I think that there were a number of, I hope someone is fact-checking his speech. But besides that, I think it's quite clear that he is not aware, or he's not accepting the science of climate change, because the world that he describes doesn't exist. There is no making money on a dead planet, right? And the whole business model that he's put forward is a fake business model. And so I think, at best, he's in so much denial that he's on another planet. I think the reality is that his administration is completely owned by the fossil fuel industry. The head of the Environmental Protection Agency is a former coal lobbyist, first Secretary of State, worked for Exxon. I could go on. So I think it makes the imperative, actually, of companies separating themselves from that. And that does mean more than nice words. That does mean actually putting their money where the words or their mouths are saying. And that's what we need to see by the end of the week.
So talking about action, well, a little bit differently, but the World Economic Forum launched this 1 trillion trees initiative, which garnered a lot of attention today. A lot of head of governments and companies said they want to join in. What do you think about that? Is it helpful on the principle of compensating carbon emissions by planting trees? Do you think it is something viable? What is your take on that?
So it's clear that we need nature as part of the solution to climate change. We need to change our industrial agricultural system. We need to absorb immense amounts of CO2 in order to have a chance of avoiding true catastrophe. But planting a bunch of trees to potentially compensate the continued pollution from fossil fuel is just not credible. It's more than that. It's just a continuation of a false solution. And I think that the fact that the forum has put something forward as planting trees rather than reducing the problem just shows how out of touch or how much they are not internalizing what it means to leave a sustainable and livable society for their kids.
But beyond that, the organization itself of such a huge economic forum here in Davos with thousands of people coming from everywhere in the world, isn't that a problem on that? Because the carbon emissions linked to the organization itself of this forum are amazingly huge, and NGOs are still coming, a lot of CEOs are still coming, and talking here about climate apocalypse and still organizing such a forum. Isn't that a contradiction in the terms?
Well, I think that it's certainly a contradiction when people come in on their private jets. I mean, the number of jets, I don't know how high it is this year, but and the way that people are arriving here, it is possible across Europe to come by train. I think that that is obviously a huge problem. I think that, and I don't think necessarily the forum is this, I think the forum has a bigger credibility issue than the CO2 emissions associated with it. I think the forum is at this moment where it either has to become an advocate for true transformation, for true inclusiveness in society, for really taking on the climate emergency, or it becomes an idea of the past. And this attempt to move into stakeholder capitalism, for example, to me is just another kind of distraction, when actually they should be putting everything that they can into solving the problem. And that's getting at the emissions at source.
And for NGOs such as Greenpeace, what is it really useful and necessary to come here in Davos? What do you expect from you and other NGOs as well to come here? What are the results afterwards?
Well, you know, every year Greenpeace International goes through the question, should we attend or not? And I think this year we made a decision to come. You know, in every conversation I try to bring truth to power. I try and confront those that may not be confronted every day by the facts. And this year we have had a big focus on the banks and the role of the banks, and have released this report here. And it is uncomfortable. It's like being in an environmental battleground, or a crime scene where, you know, all of the criminals are right there in front of you. But these are the targets. These are the people who have to change. And so I think while the vast majority needs to be on pushing the pressure from the outside, confronting people face to face, I think can make a difference. Whether at the end of the week I'll leave more depressed or invigorated that there were at least a couple of things that happened that I felt made a difference, we'll see.
Thank you so much.